Isn't it exciting when you find something hidden in the dark depths of your house that you had previously forgotten about? You can multiply that feeling by 1,000 when you discover something exciting in an abandoned house. From hair locks and a ring from a famous novelist to one of the first comic books ever printed, here are some of the most incredible things found in abandoned mansions. Before we begin, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos every day. That being said, let's begin. Number 15. A car in a Spanish mansion. It's not every day you come across an abandoned mansion, but to find one that still contains some pretty valuable stuff is even rarer. A Spanish YouTuber by the name of It's Me Antho posted a video where he toured through an abandoned mansion in Spain. While the house was lacking in furniture, it did have a few telltale signs that its occupants may have left in a hurry. There were bullets, an empty safe, and even dishes still stacked in the dishwasher and on the bench. Someone who was moving house would surely not leave it looking like that. But that wasn't the most incredible part. In the garage was a sports car that would have been worth a small fortune. The YouTuber gained access to the house through an open door on the first floor, but it looks like he may have been one of the first to do so. There are no signs of squatters, nor is there any trash or graffiti. Apart from dirt and signs of nature reclaiming the house, it doesn't appear to have seen any intentional damage. The YouTuber also found keys so that he could lock doors, which meant he had far more control over the house than any random passerby would have. The YouTuber didn't divulge the location of the mansion, so there's little chance you'll be able to go and explore it for yourself. Number 14. $6,800 in cash. Today's generation has a thing about abandoned houses. As such, people who call themselves urban explorers will find abandoned homes and structures, take photos and videos, and share them with the world. But unlike squatters and looters, urban explorers live by a code of take only photographs, leave only footprints. They won't disturb what they find and won't take what they discover. By doing so, they are allowing as many urban explorers to explore such exciting places as possible. But one urban explorer discovered more than dusty old trinkets and broken furniture. With a snowstorm to cover his tracks, the explorer, under the alias Freaktography, entered a home in Canada to find out what lay within. It looked like it had been abandoned for many years. The house contained a hospital bed, family photos and other mementos, and a full house lot of possessions that looked like no one had been through. But while exploring a bedroom, he came across a bag filled with rolled wads of cash. Each tightly wrapped bundle had a dollar value and a date, with it equaling around $6,800. The money, however, was American rather than Canadian. Because of the code laid out by urban explorers, Freaktography didn't take the money. Instead, he managed to track down a family member who was initially upset that someone had been in the house. He learned that the homeowner had passed away from cancer and the house was left to the children. A family incident and/or rift led to no one caring for the home or even seeing it sold to someone new. Once the family member got over her shock of the phone call, she arranged to meet the explorer at the house with her husband. She gave him the grand tour before he presented her with the money he had found. She was emotional and upset, but also thankful at what he had done for her. She now plans to board up all the windows until they can decide what to do with the house. Number 13. Charlotte Bronte's ring. Most people put their odds and ends in their attic to keep them out of sight and out of mind. Old broken toys, bulky kitchen appliances, and Christmas trees are common finds in such places. But one woman who was cleaning out her father-in-law's attic found something far more exciting than a broken microwave. The unnamed woman from the UK had been given the job of cleaning out the attic after her father-in-law passed away and left the house vacant. While the attic contained everything you'd expect to find in an attic, there was also a curious metal box, but no key. Eventually, after sifting through a huge number of keys in the house, she found one that opened the box. After a lot of effort, she was quite disappointed to find that there was only a ring in the box. But it wasn't an ordinary ring. And no, it wasn't from Lord of the Rings either, sorry. She noticed an inscription on the inside. With a magnifying glass, she was able to make out a name and date. It said March 1855, Bronte. The ring also had a secret compartment that contained plaited hair. The woman now believes the hair and ring belonged to English poet and novelist Charlotte Bronte, who has become known for her classic English literature. Jewelry expert Jeffrey Munn said there was no reason to believe that the ring was anything other than genuine. He said it was a common practice in the 19th century to make jewelry with hair to help them remember the character and face of those who had passed on. Number 12. Nicolas Cage's comic book. In 1995, famous American actor Nicolas Cage purchased the first ever Superman comic by the name of Action Comics #1. Before the release of that comic book, there had been no such thing as superheroes. That very comic book had shaped the superhero industry and began it. But on January 1st, 2000, the comic book was stolen from his Los Angeles home, never to be seen again. Or so he thought. Even though LAPD Art Theft Detail Department Detective Donald Herchick had been working hard on the case, there had been no leads. Therefore, Nicholas filed an insurance claim and was paid out for the loss of the book. But over a decade later, the vintage comic book showed up in a Southern California storage unit that had been abandoned. When the book was discovered, the original owner, who had sold Nicholas the comic, was contacted. He recognized that particular copy as Mr. Cage's and got in touch with the detective who had been assigned the case all those years ago. Because the comic book had no serial number and was mass-produced, it was a challenge to identify it as the one, but the markings on it aligned with those that had been on Nicholas's copy. The LAPD seized the comic as stolen property and attempted to locate the thief. Eventually, Nicolas Cage received the stolen comic book and he put it up for auction. It sold for $2.16 million, becoming one of the most valuable comic books of all time. Number 11. Rare Coins. An abandoned Pennsylvania home owned by the family of the previous owner had called upon the services of Rare Collectibles owner Jeff Beidelman. They wanted Jeff to visit the old home and take anything of value to be sold. The house had stood vacant for 2 decades, and all family members who had once lived there had now passed on. Jeff did not expect to find what he did, and neither could the family members. Jeff discovered a huge number of coins that dated from the early 1820s to the 1960s. There was a mixture of different kinds, such as Liberty dimes, Morgan silver dollars, and large cents. All the coins that Jeff found had a face value of around $8,500. However, their age and rarity meant they could sell for as much as $200,000 to the right buyers. While many of the coins were hiding in plain sight, many also weren't. Jeff noticed a hole in the wall which contained tens of thousands of dollars worth of old coins. The find was astounding, especially as he already had a full bag of coins from exploring other areas of the home. The family wished to remain anonymous, and they also didn't want to share the address of the home for obvious reasons. Number 10. Superman comic #1. David Gonzalez, an Elbow Lake, Minnesota building contractor, purchased an old abandoned 1938 home for $10,100 in 2013. As with any old house, there are gonna be a few surprises. Often, those surprises are never anything good and relate more to faulty wiring or something similar. But David was about to receive a pleasant surprise when he began undertaking renovations on the property. Used as insulation in the walls was a copy of the 1938 comic book Action Comics #1, the debut of Superman that would start a whole new world of superheroes. The book was graded as a 1.5 out of 10 on the condition scale because its back cover was detached. However, even with that defect and the fact that it had been stored in old abandoned walls for all those years, it still sold to an anonymous bidder for $175,000. Just a couple of years prior, a near-mint copy of the same comic sold for over $2 million. We can only assume that David was able to expand his budget a little further with this home's renovations thanks to that spectacular find. Number 9. Ancient Mayan Artifacts. Nick DeMola from a rubbish removal company had been hired to clean out an apartment in Manhattan after the owner, abstract artist Clinton Hill, passed away in 2004. It was a job like any other. He would go in, remove all the items, and bill the owner for his time. But as it turns out, this job wasn't like any other. At the time, Nick recalls finding a barrel with figurines and pottery within it. Instead of throwing it away, he stored it in his warehouse and later forgot about it. When he rediscovered them years later, he discovered the 60 artifacts and pieces could be from Mexico and could be quite old. They are thought to date back to between 300 BC and 500 AD. Nick decided to talk to the New York Daily Times about his discovery and said he would like to sell them. However, once the Mexican government learned about the artifacts and claimed them, Nick decided against the sale. He wanted to donate them, but not to Mexico. Nick had allowed Mexican Cultural Institute representatives to examine and photograph the pieces and was expecting an appraisal of their worth. Instead of that, he received the news that there may be a petition in the works to return the collection to Mexico. Nick said how those officials responded was not very diplomatic, and that he would like to see the artifacts go to various museums across the country rather than exclusively to Mexico. According to Mexico's Consul General, Ruben Beltran, if artifacts are thought to be part of Mexican culture, the government would try and get them back. Number 8. Frankenstein movie poster. Everyone remembers their first horror movie, we mean. Frankenstein was a classic horror film that debuted on the big screens in 1931. It was one of the first and one of the most memorable. But aside from the memories, the remakes, the DVDs, and VHS, there aren't a lot of original mementos relating to it. But in the 1970s, a rare movie poster for the film was found in a projection booth in an abandoned theater in Long Island, New York. It had been there for decades and formed a 3-sheet poster of 6 feet 6 inches by 3 feet 5 inches. Up until then, the only remnants of Frankenstein movie posters had been single sheets, inserts, a teaser poster, and half sheets. The full, intact 3-sheet poster had never been seen. It is thought to be the only one in existence, and it sat languishing in a dirty, dusty, and abandoned theater. Given its rarity, the poster was up for sale for $225,000 and was being safely stored in a private collection until it sold. Any movie buff would be thrilled to snap up such a rare piece of film history. Number 7. Bronze Age sword in a barn. The community and County Fermanagh were invested in their history and past. They continually researched the happenings in the area and even rewrote the history of the 16th century battle that happened in their small area. This involved finding out where the Battle of the Ford of the Biscuits on the Arny River took place in 1594. The project was called Battle, Bricks, and Bridges, and they were always looking for artifacts and exciting information that could paint an accurate picture of what went on. Maurice Owens contributed a sword to the research project, which was found at the river's ford. He believed it was related to the battle, but when it was found not to be, it was put to the side. Maurice's brother Ambrose had found the sword while fishing at the river in 1965. He didn't know its worth or value, so he left it in an abandoned barn on his family's farm for over half a century. It wasn't until the Battlefield project that it was brought out again, and an archaeologist took a look at it once it was deemed not relevant to the initial project. Instead, it was much more interesting. The sword dated back to the Iron Age, around 2,600 years ago, and long before the Battle of the Ford. The archaeologist who worked for the Department of Communities, Paul Logue, said that it was only the second time he had ever held a Bronze Age sword. He believed it was a warrior sword and that it had been deliberately broken and placed in the river all those hundreds of years ago. So while the sword was not the answer the community was hoping for regarding the Battle of the Ford, it did shed light on what else went on in the area thousands of years before it. Number 6. Sir John Gordon's bust. Scottish Highlands councillor Maxine Smith had been on the lookout for the old provost's robes and chains and asked the council if they knew where they could be. She was told to look in an old garden shed in a small industrial estate in Baltimore, Easter Ross. The garden shed was nothing spectacular, and she had to get a key from the council to enter it. She found what she was looking for, the chains and robes, but also much more. Holding the door open as a door stopper was an 18th century bust crafted in 1728 by the famous French sculptor Edmé Bouchardon. It was the bust of MP and Highland Laird Sir John Gordon. The sculpture, which was worth around 1.4 million British pounds, was languishing in a dusty and forgotten garden shed along with several other possibly valuable items. When Maxine reported back to the council, she said they needed to act to stop any of those items from being stolen. An insurance team was sent in and its initial worth was put at 200,000 British pounds. Number 5. Gold coins and bars. Inheriting possessions from a relative that is passed on is bittersweet. In this case, it's more sweet than bitter. An unnamed Frenchman inherited a house from his relative in Normandy and discovered more than odds and ends. Within it was over 220 pounds of gold coins and bars worth more than 3.7 million pounds. There were 5,000 gold pieces, 37 1-kilo ingots, and two 12-kilo gold bars hidden around the house. A local auctioneer, Nicholas Firefort, had been asked to visit the house to value the furniture. He hadn't seen any of the gold on his first visit, such was the discreet hiding places. It wasn't until the new owner was moving the furniture did they discover the treasures within. It was hidden under furniture, under linen, and even in unusual rooms like the bathroom. Firstly, the Frenchman had found a box of coins screwed underneath a piece of furniture. That box led him to a whiskey bottle box, and then the 12-kilo gold bars. Nicholas said the man then called his solicitor to make an inventory. Later, certificates of authenticity for the loot were found in the estate. The new property owner sold all the gold to buyers across France and the world, but the tax man might just have the last laugh. If the deceased family member hadn't declared his treasure on his taxes, the new owner could have to pay 3 years in back taxes. A 45% inheritance tax also applies to the goods. Number 4. Giovanni Boldini painting. The family of a 91-year-old woman got the shock of their lives when she passed away. And it wasn't only because they had lost a dear loved one. They discovered the elderly woman had owned an apartment in France but had abandoned it before World War II and never returned. Upon learning about the apartment, the family went and visited. Since its abandonment, it had laid untouched. All the woman's possessions were dust-covered but pristine, and the apartment was luxurious with high ceilings, stunning paintings, and elegant furniture. They don't know why she never returned to it, rented it out, or sold it. While many of the possessions were unique, interesting, and valuable, there was one in particular that caught their eye. It was an original Giovanni Boldini painting with a handwritten note from the author. The family put a starting price on the painting for 253,000 British pounds, but a flurry of bids saw it sell for 1.8 million or 2.5 million American dollars. Number 3. Aston Martin DBS. 2 words get any automotive enthusiast's heart racing. Barn find. It's when a rare, unique, or pristine car is uncovered in a barn or barn-like environment untouched for years. This Aston Martin DBS is one of those exciting barn finds, and it will get that heart racing. The car was thought to be the last to come off the production line, but its owner clearly didn't recognize its value. It was found by auction house managing partner Chris Routledge in an abandoned barn in Surrey. While its windows were smashed, its interior trim missing, and it was covered in rust, it had been stored away since 1980. During that time, its value had skyrocketed. The car's value was estimated at up to 40,000 British pounds, but its condition could see it sell for even more than that. It would be sold at auction to a car enthusiast who would surely bring it back to life. Number 2. Most expensive British motorcycle. When British bike enthusiasts learned about 8 barn-found Brough bikes going up for auction, they were shocked. They were thought to be the last known collection of Brough motorcycles in an unrestored state. They were patent-made, some were in kit form, and all had been stored in a barn in Cornwall for over 50 years under household clutter, machinery parts, and a thick layer of dust. The owner, Frank Vague, had collected the bikes, which were dated between 1926 and 1939. Frank died in 2015. The bikes were sent to auction, and all 8 bikes reached a record-breaking price tag of 752,625 British pounds. One of the Brough bikes even became the most expensive British bike to be sold at auction. The 1932 Brough Superior 800cc sold for 331,900 British pounds, or 477,205 USD. Number 1. $1 million sports cards. Urban Explorers will typically take only photos and leave only footprints, but they couldn't help themselves when it came to hundreds of sports cards that could be worth over $1 million. The Explorers had been looking through an old abandoned warehouse in Detroit when they came across manufacturer boxed crates with Topps cards. It looked like they had either been stored there or were set for distribution before the factory closed. They never made it to their destination, and they had been sitting there since the 1980s and early 1990s. The cards could be worth as little as $1 to $6 each, but the quantity is where the value's at. Some may also be rare and worth a lot more. If sold together, the cards could fetch over $1 million. The cards belong to the building owner, but Urban Explorers have been cashing in on them. The few who know about the cards have been selling them off slowly. There are bundles of them from NASCAR, Major League Baseball, and even hockey. Some of the boxes contain complete sets of cards, such as the squad from the Detroit Tigers team of 1990. Have you ever been to an abandoned house? Have you found something valuable or unique? Let us know. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time.